Welcome to More Than a Casserole, a podcast dedicated to empowering, educating, and engaging people to be more comfortable talking about death and providing holistic support to those who are in the dying process. I'm here with my co-host, Sonia Koenig, and Pastor Emma Jane Frazier with Texas Doula Movement. Great to have you guys on today.
Thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about why pastors aren't comfortable talking about death beyond the altar. Or beyond the altar call for some. So we're going to talk about that here in a sec. But first, I want you guys to introduce yourself and talk about what is Texas Doula Movement and why you guys are qualified to talk about death.
Well, my name is Sonia Koenig, as Michael said. I have been an end-of-life doula for over 30 plus years. I believe that death is something that we should all embrace. Death is part of life. And over the years, I have worked with a lot of people that have died. And Texas Doula Movement is here to educate, to teach and train people on how they can give holistic support to individuals that are dying and how we cannot fear death. And having the conversation of death is not something we should avoid, but something that we should embrace. Because like I said earlier, it's a part of life. And if you get your life affairs in order, why can't you get your end of life affairs in order?
Well, I'm Pastor Emma Jane. I'm the outreach pastor for Whole Life Christian Church West, San Antonio, Texas, and the education director for Texas Doula Movement. And I have been walking with people that are transitioning or dying for over 40 years, even before it had a title. And even before I had training, before I knew what I was doing, I just knew that when people in our family or people in our church were going through the dying process, they would call me and I would go and sit with them. People are afraid of death because it's unknown. Nobody's ever been back and said, well, this is what it's like to die. And because it's an unknown factor, we fear that. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to expect. And even though our pastors, our church leaders talk about life after death, there is very little exposure to the dying process. Mm-hmm. We talk about the living process. What to expect. We educate people. We educate our children on what to expect as they live. Mm-hmm. But we don't, because of lack of knowledge, fear, afraid to say, you'll say the wrong thing, afraid to say something that's going to make it worse. Mm-hmm. Most leaders, pastors, and even parents are afraid to talk about the fact that the dying process can be peaceful. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be fearful.
Yeah, and when you say dying process, are you talking about people who are maybe in a terminal illness situation?
Yes. They've received a word from a diagnosis, and this diagnosis has said, well, we project that you have 2 weeks to live. We project that you have 6 months to live. Mm-hmm. Well, you're still living. Mm-hmm. You know, I had a young lady that kind of mentored her from when she was young. She was in my choir and on up to adulthood. And she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she just stopped living. She didn't do anything. And I had moved to another city. And when I heard about her situation, I remember calling her and telling her, live until you die. Mm-hmm. Don't give up on life because man has put a limit. Mm-hmm. She lived years and years after the diagnosis. Mm-hmm. But in that process, when she heard that information, she just stopped living, lay on the couch and do nothing, didn't want to talk to people, was fearful, anxious, started doing things that were just out of her ordinary disposition because she was afraid of dying. Wow. But once we talked about it, she started living.
Wow. Okay.
And became very productive.
Wow. So before we move on, let's talk about what is a doula? For those who aren't familiar with that terminology, what is a doula?
Well, doula is a Greek term. And you probably have heard about birth doulas and postpartum doulas. Well, doula is someone that supports someone holistically. Back in the day when doulas first started, they were there, of course, birth doulas, and they would help support a woman having a baby to help her, to ease things for her. And so as an end-of-life doula, we do it on the other end of the spectrum. We help people as they're going out of the world. We help them as they're going through the death process. We have a little joke in my family because my little sister is a postpartum doula and a lactation doula and a birth doula. Well, I'm an end-of-life doula, and she brings them into the world, and I take them out of the world. And so a doula is basically there to help someone as they're going through something, because there are different types of doulas. You have birth doulas, postpartum doulas, end-of-life doulas, death doulas, pet doulas, menopause doulas. There's a lot of different type of doulas. And it was mostly just women, but now men are involved in being doulas. So you're giving support to someone as they're going through something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the person that is crossing over, the person that's dying that we help. We help the family members because family members have to adjust to the fact that this person is now going to leave an empty space in the family dynamics. So what do you do? How do you treat them when you know that they're dying? What do you tell children? How do you act when you're around them? So we not only help the person that is dying, but we also help the family as they go through the grieving process.
Okay.
That brings me to one of the clients I had in the hospital. I've only had him for 3 days, and I really never did anything for him. But his mother was there, and I sat with his mother the whole time he was there, and I gave her the support. So I was really there for his mother to help her through the process of her son that was passing away, and to just give her the support that she needed.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition to kind of our next segment here, talking about, why it matters for church leaders to be equipped to handle death, right? Because what you just described is, I think, the thing that people are expecting from their church leaders, right? When there's something, traumatic happening in the family, they want to look to the church, right? Which is rightfully so. That's what church is for. So how can church leaders be better equipped? And why does it matter that they are equipped to not just show up and pray and bring a casserole, but to really be there with people and help support them through that process?
Well, first of all, we have to become comfortable as an individual with death so that you can talk about it. And church leaders have great teaching, great training in what to do, how to help after a person has died, but they are seldom trained. We even have statistics. 33% of those that come out of seminary or theological schools, they say they have no training or they don't feel qualified to help those that are going through the process. And that's what we want to stress to church leaders. It's important to be there when families and when individuals are going through the process of dying. We know that Jesus prepared his disciples for his death. But pastors, church leaders, people of influence, they don't prepare their children, they don't prepare their congregants because it's such a fearful subject. It's a taboo subject. But Jesus allowed his disciples to hear death, dying, I'm going away. I won't be with you. I'm going to my Father's house. He used terminology to prepare them mentally for his passing. It's not something that you like, and it's not something that you want, but you recognize that it is another step in life.
Yeah, Sonia, can you talk about when we say preparation, what does that mean? What does that look like?
For preparing for your end of life?
Like how can a pastor help someone prepare for or go through the dying process?
Well, basically to be present, to be there. Because when a person dies, one of the things that they want to do is deal with some spiritual matters in their life. There's people they want to forgive, or people that they have done things to, and they haven't been there. And so how a pastor can prepare, first they got to be okay with talking about death. If they're not okay with talking to the person that is dying and going through the dying process, it's not going to do any good. So they have to first be okay with talking to the person that is dying. Mm-hmm. They have to be okay with knowing how to give them holistic support, because you can give holistic support to an individual that is dying. A pastor needs to know how to give emotional support, how to give social support, how to give psychosocial support, spiritual support, and physical support. And those are 4 different things in holistic support that a pastor needs to learn so that they can be able to do that. And they also need to know to be able to join a program or something that can help them be a support to their community. A pastor needs to prepare himself and his family so that he can be able to go and talk to someone that is dying and give them the support that they need. And a lot of pastors don't know how to do that. We host a quarterly summit, and we've spoke to 35 different pastors, and the majority of them have said, I'm not comfortable talking to somebody about death. They're not even comfortable dealing with their own death. They can talk to you after a person has died. They can be there for the funeral. But as a person is going through the dying process, they're not really sure what to do. And by just really dealing with it yourself and being okay with it. Mm-hmm. And then we have our More Than a Casserole program, where we come in and we teach pastors and church leaders and chaplains on how they can be a support to someone that is dying, and they can walk through the dying process with them.
Mm-hmm. And the pastoral care.
Oh, and our Pastoral Care Beyond Prayer is a program that is specifically geared to chaplains and pastors and church leaders on how they can be there for individuals that are dying. Our More Than a Casserole is more for your congregation and your community, on how you can work with them, how you can help them get their end-of-life affairs in order. And our Pastoral Care Beyond Prayer course is specifically to teach you on how you can be a support.
I love that. Can you share a story for us to be able to just visualize what that looks like? What does it look like to visualize holistic support? I know you have, you've said you went through multiple people helping them through the process. So you have a good story for us that a pastor can just visualize. Hey, what does this look like? Because they may think, they may think you're doing a great job, right? And so I would love to kind of create a parallel here between, what does it look like to really do a great job, and so that we can see how we can improve.
Okay. Well, as a church leader myself, and as an end-of-life doula, I was called to the hospital for a young man that was passing away. And the family took him home, and I was able to go in the home and work with him. And so he had some matters that he needed to be able to release. And sitting down and talking with him, he was able to share with me some things he could not share with his family. For example, like he said, his ex-wife, who he had been divorced with her for many years, she allowed him to come and die in the home. And his ex-wife, he said, she was a good wife. She was a good woman, but I was a bad husband because he was an alcoholic. His children embraced him and loved him, and they were still there for him. And he wasn't a good dad. And so he needed to be able to get those things off his chest. He didn't need me to sit there and pray with him. Although we did do prayer, we did take some time to pray, but that's not what he needed. He needed to get some things off of his chest about the kind of person he was to his family. And these were things that he was not comfortable talking to his family about, but yet he knew he was dying and he knew he needed to get it off. And so me as the church leader and the end-of-life doula, I was there to give him that space and also give him some ideas on how he can approach his family and apologize and ask their forgiveness for the things that he did. And he was able to do that before he passed away, and he was surrounded by his family with much love.
Wow. Okay, so what is, I think it's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. for both of you guys, would love to, because we kind of wrap this up. What's one practical thing a pastor or church leader could do after hearing this podcast to go and obviously take your courses, but one thing that they could go do right now to either prepare themselves or prepare those around them to provide that holistic support that you guys talked about. I know y'all gave 5 or 4 different ways. Pick one that you think you can go and practically do.
I think as a pastor myself, the thing that I can best do or encourage other pastors to do is to sit down and look at, do you have your end of life affairs together? Mm-hmm. Really think about the situation that your family and your congregation will face if you died today. Mm-hmm. Do they know where the proper paperwork is? Do they know what your desires are? Who you want to be told? Who you want to speak? I know there's protocol, but there are still things that you personally might want. What kind of picture do you want on your obituary? And write your own obituary. Write your own eulogy so that what you want is done. For example, I have stated to my bishop, to my prelate, to my husband, to my children, 1 hour. Mm-hmm. If you can't do it in 1 hour, we don't need to have anything done for me. Talk about Jesus. What you know about me after I die matters not, but what you know about Jesus matters. So I have laid out how I want my service. I want a picture of what I look like now, not when I was 20 years younger. I'm 81 years old. Don't put my 50-year-old picture there because I don't look like I did when I was 50 years. So that's a thing that pastors can do to begin to prepare themselves. And we offer them tools so that they can do that. But they need to start looking at their own end of life affairs and have they got them in order. And if they don't, hey, that gives them an opportunity to relieve that pressure off their families.
Mm-hmm. And if they don't, we have put together a book that's called End of Life Care, Peace of Mind, End of Life, Peace of Mind for Your Family. And this book basically gives them an opportunity to write down all of the important things that their family will need to know when they pass. And when you go to the funeral home to plan the funeral service, memorial service, this book you take along with you, and it will help you when you are sitting there and talking to the funeral director on, Pastor so-and-so has just passed away, and this is what he wanted for his family. This is what his end of life affairs, because not only do you have to think about your family, your end of life affairs in order for your family, you also need to think about that for your church. Because when you pass away, does the church stop or does the church keep going? That is some important information.
That's good. Yeah, I love that. And I think once they've been able to do that for themselves, then they're able to then provide that same support to other people.
And feel comfortable doing it.
Right.
Accepting the fact and acknowledging the fact that there are emotions tied to death. There's emotions tied to any kind of loss. Grief is just a fact of life. But once you have experienced it, once you have come to terms with it within yourself, then you can help someone else. But if pastors don't get their own affairs in order and don't feel comfortable talking about their own death, they won't be able to help anyone else.
Well, how can somebody get more information about Texas Doula Movement and how to work with you guys?
Well, you can first call us if you want to talk to us one-on-one at 210-400-0540. Or you can email us at carebeyond@texasdoulamovement.com. And then you can go to our website at www.txdoulamvmnt to find more information about us.
Right. We'll have that in the show notes. So you can, if you didn't have a pen to write that down, we'll have a link so you can click. So thank y'all for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.